probably.
That cleared the room. Charter amendment.
Bob did.
Yeah, they leave when all the hard work starts, right?
Sounds like Bob Taylor wants you fired.
We're now reconvening as,
Me and John, he
Or
wants.
me, I don't
we're
know.
now reconvening as the Wicomico County Council Legislative Session 2022-08 for May 3rd, 2022. First item and the only item on the agenda for the work session is the Charter Review Committee recommendations and wrapping up our work on this. So, Mr. Wilbur, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good, good, good. Good.
This is an exciting topic.
So you have, in your brief book, you do have the sections that we had reviewed. Section 202A, which was the qualifications of the voter. We chose to review that again. I believe it was, what was the recommendation? It was 25 years? That they felt that somebody who was running for a county executive needed to be at least 25 years old. And I believe there was some angst among the council members in regard to that. So is there any particular,
Wasn't it, actually,
Yes.
wasn't it older than that originally, and then didn't we go to 25?
I had some
They
notes
did, or they said 25?
that would have put a whole new section in the 202 that would have set forth whatever qualifications. I think there was a lot of discussion about that.
I don't think I don't think currently there's an age, a mention of age in the current charter. They recommended there should be and suggested 25 years of age. So what does the council think? 18, 25, 32?
Mr. President, if my memory serves me correct, and Mr. Wilbur, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the Charter Review Committee was looking to match that age requirement to the age requirement of the county executive. And that currently is 25 years of age for the county executive.
Yep.
So that's where the 25 years came in.
I'm sorry, yeah, I got that, I'm sorry, I got that mixed up. You're right.
I think we got enough.
Good.
I was just gonna say that I think there's gonna be enough things to deal with. I don't think this is one of them that really is that important. You just have to be a qualified voter, which means you have to be at least 18 years old. So personally, I don't have any desire to raise it. I don't have any desire to change it, considering all the other potential changes that we might have to make and the limited room on the ballot.
Any other comments? I kind of agree with that, Josh. We do know that what we're really looking for are things that we need to kill, things that may not be worth the expense of putting on the ballot.
And voters can make that decision if they think that's too inexperienced or too young, then they can make that decision.
Well, I'm saying,
If someone was that young and wanted to run, but.
I guess what I was trying to say is that, and maybe I'm wrong, I just thought that we, in the best interest of the people who are going to the ballot box, that we not give them 24 questions that they have to review, even though if changes are necessary, they should be made. So Josh is saying there's nothing.
They might still end up with that, but but this is one that, like you're saying, I think you're trying to say, and Josh said that, no, I can live with it staying like it is.
Any other comments? Is that okay? So we'll drop any recommendation.
Drop the age.
Section 202A. Thanks for the clarification, Ms. Early.
That was two parts, though. They recommended the age, and then they also recommended the residency requirement. They're making the recommendation for the county council of 2 years to live in Wicomico County, and then 1 year within the district.
Comments
I think that needs to be left in.
as a change?
Just really do mind, like, telling us what it currently is, and then what they, look at three different,
Yeah.
like 3 different screens here, trying to, if you had it, if you're able to do that.
Okay, so let's see, it says,
I don't believe there is,
Mr. Wilbur, either one.
right, in the 202, I don't see any existing residency requirement.
There is just a
An E.
provision about the change in residency.
Yeah.
So if
Right.
you were to live out of your district, you couldn't serve that district.
Right.
There's only one problem with that. Okay. Say you have a council person that's served, okay, he served the 4 years, and then redistricting comes along, right?
Been in a district for
Okay,
1 year.
and he gets redistricted into a different district. It means he couldn't rerun, right?
Right.
So that's a problem.
Although I think the redistricting committee, when they did their work, they tried to keep incumbents in their district.
Yeah, but it could happen the other way around.
It could.
At some point, at some point in time, and I guess in one district, within the next 10 years, there's going to be about probably 3,000 to 4,000 homes built.
Right.
Okay, that's going to dramatically change the population, and that could dramatically change the boundaries. So you could have a council person that has served, for 1 term or 2 terms, and, if they got popped into another district due to that, they wouldn't be able to run again. So,
Well, I think another example is, I'll use my own case. I mean, I live in a district that I'm a stone's throw away from the neighboring district.
well, I am too.
Yeah, and I literally spend more time in the neighboring district because I'm just a little pocket. I'm actually in Nicole's district. I'm in the part that's across the river, which is kind of like, it's a little odd, because most of it's on the west side of the county, but I'm in that little pocket that jumps across the river. So, but I could just move a few, down the street a little bit when now I'm in another district. But it's not like that really changed. Why shouldn't I be able to run in the district, if I moved there 3 months ago?
Yeah.
Plus if you file, you're already going to be, you have to live in the district when you file, which is
Right,
going to be,
right.
8 months ahead of an election?
Right.
So you're almost going to have to be in that district, like this is saying before you file or whatever, but you would still be in the district for
Right.
8 months or more. In any district, you're running in a district by the time the election came around.
So what would be,
So the
What's the
proposal again say it again, is 2 years?
Yes, so it would be 2 years to live in Wicomico County and 1 year within the district.
Right.
That's adding that language that's
That is
currently not
adding
there.
that language,
Yes,
yes.
this would go on the ballot.
I'd do the 2 years for Wicomico County.
Yeah, I do like living in the county. I mean, I certainly
Yeah,
think that's important.
Yeah.
I do want to point out that in the charter, it does currently say that no member of the county council should be required to vacate his office by reason of any change in the boundary lines of his councilmanic district during his term.
During the term, yes.
That doesn't count for the election.
Right.
I think we just need to leave the 2 years residency in the county maybe in that.
why should someone have to live in Wicomico County for 2 years, I mean, what if Elon Musk moved to Wicomico County and run for county council? More than
You gotta be here
qualified.
2 years.
More than qualified. Why do
don't
you
know
have
the
to,
county.
why do you have to be here for 2 years?
You gotta know where you're living.
Shouldn't you know something about the county you represent, John?
Right.
The voters would vote you out if they didn't think you deserved it.
To decide.
I don't know, I'm just saying.
It's up to
Yeah.
the people.
That's what I think. It's a voter's decision, not ours.
It's, I'll tell you like Bill says, these people recommended this. That's what Bill says all the time.
Yeah, I think we're finding ourselves in this position of, I'm fine sort of with a recommendation to a degree. We're just in this situation of, does it though rank high enough to make it to the ballot? Is this important? Yeah, is this important enough? Because we're going to have, well, I think eventually here we're going to get something we're going to add. But these first couple seemed a little, is this one of them?
I think that the county, and forget just since we had an executive legislation form of government in 2006, even before then, there wasn't a 2-year requirement. The county's done quite well. I don't think we found any damage from not having a 2-year requirement.
Quite well before 2006, where we had a county executive too, right?
Right. So the question is, do we want to do the 2 years of residency and district 1 year, or do we want to strike it? That's the question.
As much as it sounds nice, I guess, in general, I don't think it rises to the level of being important enough to go on the ballot, in my opinion. But then again, I'm only lukewarm on any of this. I don't really care that strong.
Anybody else? I guess we're going to take a vote on it. Joe?
Yeah, let's just vote on it.
Joe, keep it or put it on the ballot or keep it off?
I'm neutral on it. It doesn't, whatever anybody else does.
Ernie?
I don't think we need it.
Bill? Go. Josh? Okay, well,
I kind of agree with Joe. I'm kind of neutral.
okay. And we decided that what about the 25 years? Did we decide no on the 25 years?
We decided we weren't going to do that. That was a no.
I think it was no.
We'll leave that alone. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we're making some headway. 202C, Mr. Wilbur. This is, I think, a really important one. And I think we deferred to you to review it with the Attorney General. And that is, I'll read it for everyone. It says 202C, under other offices, no person shall hold office as a member of the county council while he or she holds any other office or employment for profit of or under the state or the county. And, some people are saying that means that teachers couldn't do it, or I guess maybe a firefighter couldn't do it, or a police officer couldn't do it. And Josh, I know you had sent out, had some concerns on that.
Yeah, so multiple people brought it up. I mean, it says in, I guess, employment, basically for the state or the county. Once again, I kind of feel lukewarm on it. I think it'd be nice to have, we want more folks to be able to serve if that's what they want to do, to be qualified. But obviously,
Does it rise to the
yeah.
level?
Well, have we been able, do you have an answer as to
Yeah,
if a teacher
there's
could
a
serve?
couple of Attorney General opinions
Okay.
that spoke to this. The key words in the charter that we have would be office, it says or employment, but it's office for profit. That's what has been defined. And the one AG opinion that had a lot of information in it was about a part-time professor at a university in Maryland. And that was not considered to be an office for profit because that person did not receive a commission, take an oath, or exercise any portion of the state's sovereign power, and was held not to hold an office for profit. So to use the example of, say, a teacher, that's an employee of the state or the county, but I don't think a teacher has a commission, takes an oath, or exercises a portion of the state's sovereign power. So I would not consider a teacher to be an office for profit. Okay.
And I see teachers, I just have to go to a lot of council meetings from everything, municipalities to counties, and like in Delaware and the Eastern Shore, but in a lot of the cities, when I go to meetings, teachers are on the local boards, local city councils.
Yeah.
I know, and same thing in Delaware when I'm over there at meetings. I know a couple of the towns, the mayor's a teacher.
Jim Myers used to be there.
Yeah, it's just, so it just seems like it'd be odd that, Wicomico, wouldn't, it's not for profit. Because that was, the not for profit, they don't hold office and it's not a job. I don't even know what the definition of that sort of, how are they defining that?
Yeah. When they use these words, does not receive a commission, take an oath, that to me suggests something other than, say, a state or county or employee. It's at some higher level.
So as it is now, it's okay.
Yeah.
Would not create a conflict.
I think you're excluding with that language a very small category of people.
All right.
So just to be clear, are you saying that educators could run?
Yes,
And could-
that's what I believe
hold-
the AG opinion.
Right now, as our charter is written,
Yes, yes.
Because I know
It's been a
people.
long time, that's been a long time I've heard
Yeah,
for years that that's
yeah.
not allowed.
I hear all the time, and like teachers want to run, so well, I can't run for county council because I'm a teacher.
Or boy, they
Some of it might
can't, they
be
can't hold
restricted
both.
because of the teacher, someone on the other side saying they can't do it.
No, it's just always been I've just heard that time and time again. Educators that are interested in running, they say, well, teachers can't run. And, nobody. Sometimes things just get a life of their own.
Yeah.
Somebody said that 25 years ago, and everybody's been repeating it ever since, I guess. But
But what about another county employee, right? That couldn't happen. Or is this under this language, or does this language need to be stronger, or does this language?
Here's where I think you might run into an issue with another county employee would be under the ethics, the making decisions where you might be conflicted because you're holding a position in a county department. It might not prevent you from running, but it might really restrict your ability to vote on
It's never bothered
issues.
anybody before from voting on
You
that.
just abstain, right?
So we're good, right?
Yeah, that's the way I see it.
202D, this is, again,
Ethics got to do with it.
this is referencing as far as if a member of the county council ceases to be a qualified voter of the county or is convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude, she immediately forfeits the office. I think we've already corrected all this, haven't we? Where I think Andy helped us with the terminology of moral turpitude.
I think it was
And a felony or
It
something?
would be felony or crime involving moral turpitude.
Okay.
So it's the felony, or you could have a misdemeanor involving moral turpitude.
Okay. And this is.
Both would exclude.
Okay, and this is something that would not only be involve the council with 202D, but also the executive in section 409? Okay. What's the council's take on this to change that terminology to include felony? Yes,
So the language is actually already in section 409, you're just matching it.
oh, thank you very much, thanks. So we would be changing D for the county council, so it is the same terminology as the county executive. What do we think here as far as the
It's-
level of importance?
it is exactly the same,
It isn't now.
but it will be.
But it would be
You're
if
right,
we add
202D and
if we add
409,
felony or,
moral turpitude.
then it's the same.
All right. So basically, if we do 202D as a,
If we put felony in 202D, it would match what's already in 409
right,
Correct.
for the executive.
both of those just found their way as a charter amendment.
The charter amendment would only reference D as for the county council, because the executive already has that scattered
Right.
in it.
It's already there for the
This
executive.
is only to change this one section.
Okay,
This is I mean, I guess the question, this would be its own item on the ballot, right?
right.
Even though a crime, right, the current law is restrictive enough, right, that it's convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude. What we're saying is we would just match it by adding a felony or with
Yeah.
crime of moral turpitude.
Right.
So I think moral turpitude is more broad, right, and felony specific.
It's usually lying, cheating, stealing.
Right.
Paul, a few years ago, there was a gentleman signed up to run for county council that had actually been in federal prison for embezzlement. Okay? So somebody asked at the election board whether he could run, and they said, sure. He could run, and he could win. So would this
Yeah.
would eliminate that?
No, I think this is forfeiture. So this is you're in office
Okay.
and you're convicted of a felony or a crime. of
Okay,
moral.
so-
Then you lose the office.
So that person could have ran and won and still served, even though he was a convicted federal.
I believe that would be the way
Yeah.
this is interpreted, yes.
All right.
Someone, yeah. And moral turpitude includes what again? What is moral
It
turpitude?
basically is lying, cheating, and stealing, as Andy said.
What if you kill somebody?
Well, and felonies
felony.
can be a broader group of crimes than just moral turpitude crimes.
So if we don't have it in here, a council person could Zoom every meeting from the state penitentiary.
Yeah. Right.
I would think that The reason I say that so quickly is in Virginia, I've practiced a long time, it's really common. And they always say, when the judge will say something, he'll say, that's lying, cheating, stealing. Or you're taking a deposition, you just throw that out. But yes, I would think that most people would consider killing someone without a reason, like self-defense, to be morally inappropriate.
So I think
I'm just wondering whether we need to put this felony issue in here.
So there would be felonies that would not be.
Right.
I was just kind of saying that in jest,
No,
but you're saying that someone commits a felony, which was more serious than moral turpitude, could still be on the council.
Well,
different.
Not the executive, but the council.
if they were on the council and they committed the crime and were convicted of it, then they would forfeit their seat. That's what this is saying.
Change. As it is now, they could be convicted and still stay on the council.
As it is now, right, it has to be a crime just involving moral turpitude.
Right.
Yeah.
So right now, someone could be convicted of a felony and still serve on the county council.
because felonies don't particularly have
Right.
moral turpitude, correct?
Yeah.
Some don't.
Like, for example,
Every time we say something, it gets more complicated here.
Yeah. I mean, generally, moral turpitude is looking at certain lying, cheating, stealing. I would think if you killed somebody, but there could be
stealing a life. Yeah.
there could be things that were felonies. I don't know one off the top of my
Yeah.
head that's not routinely considered a felony.
So legally, from your legal
Could be a drug offense.
as a legal opinion, do you feel that a person committing a felony, that should be put in here to restrict them from continuing to serve on the county council? Let's say we're asking you for legal advice. Do we want a felon on the county council?
There you go.
Okay.
That is the question.
So then it probably needs to be put on here. All right. Is that okay with everyone? All right. So that'll be one we keep on the list for right now. All right. So, and we're good with that, right? Everything else is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when, Mrs. Hurley, when you reference section 409, but there's nothing in section 9 that's being recommended for a charter change, right?
In 409?
Yeah, it was just a reference to compare it to 202D.
I believe 409, it is on the list, and it's on the list because I think there was discussion as to whether that section should be expanded.
All right, then we'll get there when we get there. Okay, I just want to,
Yeah.
okay. So then the next on the list was section 204, compensation. And it says, again, of course, review again to consider adding the sheriff.
This is basically referring to when we do a salary study, the compensation and allowance commission, that we also include the sheriff
Right.
within that.
And the state law on this right now is the salary, it's the sheriff receives an annual salary, the greater of $58,000, or the salary set by the county council of Wicomico County before the start of the term of office. So I think the question for the council is, do you want to receive the advice of the compensation committee on the sheriff's salary, or just set it yourself?
It seems very odd that they put it in the charter that the compensation committee deal with the executive on the issue with the executive and the council, but completely seem to forget to even include the sheriff in that. But again, in order not to have too many questions on the ballot, it's been working just fine and well with the commission agreeing to accept the sheriff as one of the obligations to evaluate.
Right.
And I don't think a charter amendment is necessary to continue with that agreeable.
I don't know, I'm not real sure I agree with that, just because they're basically doing something that they're not actually obligated to do.
It's more of an ask by the council,
Right.
and they agree to take it on.
Just because they've done it, yeah, but, so then the next one, they don't do it.
No, the council can charge them with that responsibility. It doesn't have to you don't have to have a charter amendment to make that demand of the committee. You can still say, here's include the sheriff. We want you to include the sheriff.
Right, it's a shall for the county council and the county executive. It's a sort of,
What's-
we ask you
But-
for the council,
But
for the
we can
sheriff.
demand that.
Or
Just like you
demand.
said,
Can't we?
John, it's like, well, they left out the sheriff. So we're going, so basically saying, let's continue to do that.
Well, the committee doesn't care about the charter per se. The committee is doing what they've been charged by the county council to do. And the county council may not have the authority to by charter to say that, but as an elected body, we can obligate a committee to do anything we want.
Right. I mean, what's the likelihood that the compensation committee would say, it's not in the charter, we won't do it? I think that's quite unlikely.
It would be nice to tie up all the loose ends and have it here, but again, it's a question of, do we want to trouble it with that? So what, somebody speak up.
I'd say leave it off. It's like I say, we can ask them to do it, or future councils can ask them to do it, you know.
Anybody else?
I don't have strong feelings, but I agree with Joe.
Yeah, I don't see a reason to put it on there.
Something wrong.
So no on that one,
Right, no on that one.
okay?
Section 205, A and B in reference to vacancies. The consensus for the recommendation was to remove requirements for special election, change shall to may for nominees from central committee and recognize unaffiliated. Boy,
I'd let Nicole talk about this one.
God, this,
I just think it's a simple change that, end of the day, we've talked about this before, but, you want, and once again, Nicole, I'll preface, we're not saying you want the person,
That's okay. That's
Right.
okay.
I'm just saying in
I
general.
understand.
Right. In general, if we think there's, we want to talk to 4 candidates, in fact, we had, you got 15 people apply, but we think there's, a 4th candidate that we would like to consider. Let me think. No, get your hand up. I'll call on you in a minute. No, go ahead. Before I get too far, you might be.
Yeah, because you guys have already talked about this and have given a consensus.
Right, consensus was to.
Yes.
Right.
The
We
had
consensus
total
was
consensus to do it.
remove
Right,
that
the
requirement.
sentence,
Oh, we did?
the
Yes.
sentence I drafted for this was, a vacancy of an unaffiliated council member shall be filled by another qualified unaffiliated person.
So this was not to open it for everyone to apply. The Republicans and Democrats still went through the same
But
process.
you need to fill from the same party,
Okay,
but we could have an unaffiliated council person.
okay.
All right, so at this point, we're just on well, John, you were talking about the May part, and we're talking about 2 different, and you're
That-
talking about the unaffiliated
Right.
part. So which one are we,
You guys all agree to all of that? I think the question now is the priority. I mean, is this a priority?
I think that's a yes.
You have to have the unaffiliated piece because that's most likely going to happen. 21% of the current elected Wicomico County folks.
You know, this could be simplified pretty easy. And other than death, instant death, I guess you would call it, is to let whoever is vacating the seat to pick their replacement.
Yes. Hang on a second, guys. Hold on a second. Go ahead, Joe.
They're having a conversation. They're
I'm trying to figure out which one May is in.
All right, just hang on a second, Joe. Let's get it straight.
Yeah, if we get too, the unaffiliated, we have to, that's not there at all. We have
It's not there, that's why I read that sentence.
But the part about the shall and may,
Then you go to the next
That's a
sentence,
second discussion.
the second
entirely.
discussion, right?
right, okay, so you're not talking about that right now?
No, go ahead, Joe, sorry.
Go ahead, Joe.
So we could simplify this somewhat, is let the person who's vacating the seat pick their replacement, other than if it was an accidental death, and then the council could pick somebody. In other words, like when Mark left, okay, let whoever's vacating the seat, if Bill's leaving because of health, or I'm leaving because of health, they could pick somebody to replace herself.
I couldn't disagree with that more. That's, That's not very, why,
I didn't-
why would we do that?
I didn't think this first section we're talking about had anything to do with appointing anyone. This had to do with whether or not the person that was appointed would have to go through a reelection. Isn't that true?
That's another,
Yeah, that's part of it,
That's the
yes.
second piece.
that's another piece, yeah.
Right, but in what I'm
If we
reading,
appoint them, they wouldn't have to go through an election, is what I'm saying. They wouldn't have to go to the election if somebody appointed them.
well, we just had put this on the ballot a few years ago, specifically because, and I guess as Nicole's opinion, Nicole's example would be a perfect example. It was stated among the council's concerns, and Mark Kilmer, I think, was the one who initiated this. The concern was you have someone who gets appointed within the first year. That person sits through an entire 3 more years, and they really weren't elected by their constituency. They were appointed by the council, and he felt, and the council at the time felt, that yes, it would be appropriate to have that individual that was appointed in only the first year to have to go to a special election so that the people could decide whether they wanted to keep that individual or have someone else as their representative. It was felt at the time that having an appointed representative for a 3-year term was too long. I'm just giving you a history.
And I think once it happened, like once we actually went through it, I don't think the citizens, I think from what I was hearing, it was a very different tone. Like, okay, you just got in office and now you're going through a campaign cycle and we're trying to find someone to represent us. I think it was maybe it wasn't the best choice to put on
But that's in 206.
Yeah.
We're still in 205. That will be addressed in 206 in special election.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so that's my apology.
Well, there is a reference
Yeah, there's a
to
reference.
206 and 205.
Right.
I was talking about a special election.
Right. We do have the 206 question, but it blends into the last sentence of 205A. Because it says, unless there is a special election described in 206 to fill the seat, any member so elected shall serve. So we've got, is it going to be any member so elected or any member so appointed?
I've read it like over and over, and I still get confused by it.
Well, let's say, well, we have to decide what we're going to do with 206. That will decide that sentence.
That's correct.
Right.
I don't like the special election. I don't like that what Nicole had to go through. Sorry, Nicole. That seemed tough. That seemed not helpful.
it.
Personally.
And it's also with the Board of Education too.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind that she didn't have someone who was running against her, but they're expensive. Campaigns are expensive, and you're asking someone to do that twice in a 2-year period. So you may not even get candidates that want to do it.
Anybody else? Okay, so, Mr. Wilbur, can you help us on what we're trying to clarify here? 'Cause
Okay.
I'm really confused.
All right. I think on 205A, I think there's a consensus to have a sentence about an unaffiliated council member, because that could happen. Hasn't happened yet, but it could happen. So then the second question is involving 206 and the last sentence of 205A is, do you want to have a special election to fill a vacancy, or do you want that to be a council appointment, or as Joe has said, the person that goes out appoints the next person in? So appointment or election?
What do we want to do? Keep an appointed person in office or have a special election? Joe? Ernie, think about it, Joe. Ernie?
I'm just,
Which would, yeah.
I've seen what we've been through, what we went through prior to when we appointed Nicole, seen what we went through when we were trying to appoint a school board member. It's, doing appointments is tough, because the first thing you got to remember is you got two different parties up here. And then if you get into the unaffiliated, that really complicates things,
Yes.
you know? So, I mean, that really throws,
That's just the way it is. I mean,
yeah.
it's our
I mean,
job to make it.
Yeah, well, I
work.
know, I
Yeah.
understand that. I mean, I'm looking at it to be more fair for the citizens, and really more fair for the person that either has to run for the election or gets elected, or gets appointed. And I understand that, you know, when you walk in with 3 years to go, it's like Mark said, it's 3 years of somebody that's been put in that position without being elected. But on the other hand, you know, to run like Nicole had to do was seemed blatantly unfair, too. So, I don't know.
I see done. An election or just an appointment?
I guess, I don't know, go back to the appointed part of it, or leave it, go back to the appointed, or leave it like it is. I don't care. You know, it's,
What would you like to see done?
Sorry. Election?
Nicole? Josh?
Appointed for the full term, no special election.
Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of leaning toward the appointed. One option is too, we can also deal with the time frames, you know, I mean, you know, if it does seem a little odd, which is almost sort of what happened, it gets back to that whole thing, it's 3.5 years or something, that is a long time for someone to serve that's appointed. So, I don't know. I certainly understand the whole thing having to run, kind of run twice in a couple-year period then, if you were running again for county council.
I think that's a responsibility of the Central Committee to explain that to all the people who are applying for the position.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, they're both kind of, there's pros and cons to both. So, you know, I'm definitely very sort of just middle of the road. I don't have a burning desire either direction. It's not ideal, but it's not, unfortunately, it's not ideal anyhow, you know, when you have,
the simplifying.
When someone leaves.
Appointed down for me.
I'd like to see him elected.
Is Larry?
I'd like to see him elected. Ernie?
Excuse me.
yeah, we'll do it again.
What would you like, Ernie? Elected. Larry,
Yes,
elected or appointed?
appointed.
Right, Bill?
Elected.
Forgot Birdie. And Joe, what did you say? Appointed? Yeah. All right, so we have 4 appointed. All right, so appointment stays, and we do not make a recommendation, or no, so we're going to have to make a charter change so that we strike any reference to being elected.
Yeah, we'll strike out 206.
Well, I mean, and I'm not sure I understood your question totally clear. I thought we were, if they're appointed, are you saying we're not doing any appointments?
No, we're saying, no, appointments have to be done. What I'm saying is if a person is appointed, as it says here, within 45 days.
Right, okay, basically we're saying what's already there.
Yeah, others, do you want to keep the election
Right.
in place, or do you,
That's what I was saying.
you want to keep the election
I
in
just want to make
place?
sure you weren't saying we were abandoning the appointment and just doing a special election, period.
So do you want the appointment to stay, or do you want to see a special election?
Well, that's,
The way it is now, it says you have to have a special election if a person's appointed within
We're
40.
going to put it on the ballot to be appointed.
Are you okay with that, or do you not
Only.
want to see the person appointed have to run for office? The person that's been
you
appointed
understand
within.
what he's asking?
To me, you're deciding, do you want the vacancy to be filled by a special election or by the appointment of council?
Not the position to be filled, but when a position is filled by appointment,
Then they have to run,
as it is right now, they have to run again if they were appointed
Right.
within 45 days. Isn't that
Right.
correct? Okay, if they've been appointed within 45 days, as it is right now, if you've been appointed to replace someone within 45 days of the election, you are required, as it is now, to have a special election and to run in that election.
right.
And I'm voting to say that stays like it is.
That the person-
That part of it,
Oh, so you do want to see them required to go through the election process?
yes.
Okay, all right, so we have, the majority does want to see it remain as it is.
That's where we are.
So it remains as it is. Now, the second part of that was with the Central Committee. And in this verbiage, it says that there's a terminology, thereof shall be filled by a qualified person, blah, blah, submitted by the state, or by the Central Committee.
Yeah, local central.
Many of us felt that put us in a huge bind, and shall should have been may.
Right.
And I think,
They still, the process will still be the same, they still make 4 recommendations, but if we want to consider a 5th candidate that had applied, we could do that, and that may, we might appoint somebody other than what they submitted. End of the day, the council wants to be appointing what they feel is the best person.
So can I just weigh in on that a little bit, because I went through that?
sure.
I don't agree with the Central Committee necessarily putting the names forward, because it's definitely a delay, and I know that citizens were not happy with not having representation for however long it took in that process. But I also know that when you have 2 parties at play here, it's difficult to get a consensus on something you want. Now, I don't know if we could even do this, but if it would be council members of the same party are selecting the replacement.
I would totally oppose that. I mean, we're a council body. Every council person should get a vote.
Well, in one of the Charter Review Committee meetings, a gentleman made a really good point that I wasn't thinking of. He said, one of the Democrats said that when he was on the council, they intentionally picked someone they knew wasn't going to win in the next election. And I'm not saying that's everyone's mindset, but
You can't
it's a
do that.
Republican, a Democrat.
Because when I first got on, I was the only Democrat here.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't go by just saying that that party picks the next person, because there wouldn't be nobody here.
Or if you had an unaffiliated one.
Yeah.
Is the county executive a Democrat then?
No.
That's, I just think that's too far removed from the whole intent. I mean, end of the day, I think it's just pretty simple. It's just giving the council the option to,
We don't have to choose somebody that the Central Committee sent in front of us.
we do, yes, we do.
It says shall
Yes, we do.
now.
You
do now.
You're talking about
Right.
changing that to may.
It says shall. We got to pick from the 4 they recommend.
Right.
Period.
Now, could we go,
Somebody, if there was a 5th person you want to talk to, it doesn't matter, you can't pick that person.
does it clearly say right now that we can ask again for more considerations? Or could we say more than, why is it limited to just 4, I guess? Could we say up to 7 persons? Or something like that from the Central Committee. I'm just throwing this out. If that, whether or not we want the Central Committee, how much we want them to be a part of.
But the same
That
thing can
process.
still happen. I mean, I think end of the day, the simple thing you change shall to may. In fact, and that goes on all the time. I mean, I see this a lot in other councils and stuff. The word, I mean, and Paul, I know you can attest to this in court. Shall and may gets talked about
All the time.
all the time.
Yeah.
And but it's much easier dealing with may, and it's to our advantage. I mean, in the day, it's to our advantage as a council. It just gives us.
I agree.
You're trying to appoint the best person possible. So I don't think you want limitations on that. You want to, and that's, most appointments are sort of like that. I mean, when the governor makes appointments, there's some situations, our school board used to be like that when we had an appointed school board. The local central committee would make appointment or makes recommendations to the governor. They didn't have, though, to pick from those recommendations. They could pick they still had the option of picking someone else other than who was recommended.
So we're okay with changing shall to may? Yep. Yes, okay, shall to may, thank you.
Mr. President, before you move on, just for clarification, was 205, not to make things more confusing, but was 205, the recommendation is to remove the requirement for the special election?
No,
No,
No.
keeping the special election.
Keeping the special election?
it
Yes.
stays just like it is.
Yeah.
So they recommended, the Charter Review Committee recommended to get rid of it, but we're going to keep it.
Everybody wants to keep it.
Yeah. I don't know if we got the right votes for, yeah. I don't know if-
But the majority,
Did we have a majority on that? I think that was the kind of question.
Yeah,
It was 4-3, and then there was a reverse, made it 4-3 the other direction.
yeah, it was 4-3, and then Bill changed his mind, said he wanted to have it elected.
Right.
He meant to have it elected,
or I thought I said the same thing.
so that was
Oh,
4-3.
I think,
yeah, she
So it
said
was a
you're right.
4-3.
didn't Larry vote to get rid of the
Larry
special
did. Joe,
election?
you were for elected?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Joe, Ernie, me, and
Joe,
Bill.
you said that you wanted appointed
He did.
earlier.
Yeah,
You said
I did say
appointed.
Oh, but it's
didn't say
appointed with the
elected.
election, right?
That's what it is now.
Yeah, that's what
You
I
said appointed until the next election,
That's not what I meant. I said appointed.
until,
Like,
Do you want the appointed person to remain there for 3 years, or do you want a special election?
appointed,
So no special election. Which-
yes.
So if,
no
so if a
special
person is,
Full-time, yes, yeah,
so
okay,
if a person is appointed within the first 45 days, you want them to stay throughout the 4-year term?
yeah.
That's a big difference, okay.
I'd say so.
Better roll call again.
Mr. President, that was my vote as well.
I got you for that, Larry. Thank you. All right, so we got,
Let's wait, wait 2 minutes. And then we're gonna do it again.
yeah, I know, no kidding. So I have Nicole saying that she wants to keep the appointed person in office for the full term. Josh says the same, Larry says the same, and Joe says the same. Is that correct?
I think that may be the first time in our voting history that the four of us have voted together. To be clear.
Hey,
All right, so that will be
you can
changed.
change.
Now we're getting rid of the special election.
Now we're getting rid of the special election.
oh my goodness, if I change. Oh.
And at the same time, we're going to remove shall with may.
Right,
Okay.
And add the.
Is that correct? That's, all right,
right.
And add the unaffiliated, right?
And the unaffiliated, right.
Okay.
wow. Are we going to put all that into one vote for the,
I think
No,
that
unaffiliated,
that would all be in the question about Section 205.
leave it up to you.
Well, you're gonna have, when we have a charter amendment for 205A, because that's gonna, everything we just mentioned in one way or another is gonna be in 205A. Is it A or B? Yeah, no, A.
A shall will be in A and B, and unaffiliated will be in new term C.
Yeah, but A will also be in the, won't that be in the end of, doesn't it have to be referenced in A at the end or something? Does it get referenced anywhere in A? The issue about unaffiliated?
I put that in A as just a separate sentence.
Right, but there'll be a sentence in A
Yes,
referencing that, which
yes,
is part of the change.
yep.
But then in 206, you're going to have the addition of,
Well,
where-
206 is a separate question.
where's it, but the whole addition of unaffiliated, do you have to add a separate section to deal with
It's a
that?
new letter, I think.
New letter, like a part C or whatever now?
I put,
Figure out how you have to work it in, okay?
yeah, I put it
You know what we want.
sentence, yeah, I think, okay, here was my
Yes.
suggestion, when we stop tonight, that I will try to incorporate all this language so that we all see the same changes underlined, so you can all look at them. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good, okay.
We'll just have a charter with underlines in it.
Yeah, and strikeouts and capitals maybe.
Right, something like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'd be a great idea. Okay, when anybody is ready to stop, let me know, okay? Section 304C is the next
Getting close.
point.
I'm getting weak.
Paul, you were going to research this?
Okay.
This is a reference to a council administrator and special assistants.
Yes. There was an AG opinion that touched on this. It says, finally, in our view, the prohibition on final adoption of an ordinance, resolution, rule, or regulation bans such, the 1954 legislation, the state law, bans such action outside the course of a meeting, a matter not clearly addressed in the Open Meetings Act. So where I was is you could have closed sessions to discuss it, But ultimately, I think there has to be a resolution of appointing done in open session.
Okay, to refresh everybody's memory, the reason the council had a real problem with this was it was very important for us to hire a forensic auditor. And when you're hiring a forensic auditor, you certainly don't want to let the individuals you know who are most likely going to be investigated by a forensic auditor to know that you're hiring a forensic auditor. This doesn't allow us to do this. That means that we would have to say, okay, we want to hire a forensic auditor.
Just a thought on that is, as soon as you do the hiring and that person begins their examination, it's, the target, we'll say, is clear.
But how can the council in open work session talk about what their justifications are for hiring a forensic auditor?
I'm not saying that you would. I'm saying that you would just put that resolution out for a yes or no vote.
But we would still be able to discuss it in closed session?
But I think your discussions could be, I think you're in that administrative closed session territory.
If I may. So, Mr. Wilbur, in letter C, where it mentions by resolution,
Yep.
do we have to do it by resolution? I mean, there are many contracts that the county enters into that do not come before the county council for approval. So is this something that the council could enter into a contract with, but not necessarily have it approved by resolution? It's letter C.
C,
304 or 305?
304C.
It's 304C.
Experts, consultants, attorney.
It's the second line down.
Do you have a current charter that you're looking at?
Sure.
It should say 305C, experts, consultants, attorneys, the council, the council, it's at its discretion.
Right.
Okay,
And such provisions in its budget or supplementary appropriation. Oh,
by resolution.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Engaged.
I read it like 5 times. And
I think to address Laura's point there, I think the question of doing it without having a resolution, you want to strike by resolution, and then the question is just hiring, contracting to hire.
Well,
My recommendation would certainly be, under most circumstances, to do it by a resolution, but if that word by resolution is not in there, in a special circumstance like that forensic auditor circumstance,
I can see why it's requiring by resolution for us to engage the services. I can see that. The only downside I saw to it was having to make it public. But if you're saying we can go into closed session
to discuss it.
the meat of the subject, then it sort of limits that problem.
Your discussions, though, are not open to the public in closed session.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it.
But
we
if you
wouldn't-
do it by resolution, then
Like
something.
Mr. Wilbur says, the resolution would just be cut and dry. There would not be any descriptive, vernacular there. It would just be yes or no, we're going to hire them.
As soon as that resolution is passed, then anybody who's paying attention is going to say, why? And then as soon as that person begins their forensic efforts,
It's a
They
cat's
know.
out of the bag anyway.
right.
What was your concerns, Mrs. Hurley, on this?
Why, the situation that we ran into with hiring the forensic auditor, actually. I mean,
Mr. Wilbur says that we could have had that forensic discussion in closed session through the whole detail and then just simply said, we're going to hire a forensic auditor.
I think it's as administrative.
yeah,
Whether or not we pass that resolution on a Wednesday and the forensic auditor shows up on Thursday, it's the cat's out of the bag anyway.
Kind of
There is
hearing
that
all that, yeah, I'm not sure this rises to the cut list. Seems like there's a way we could do it. We may not do it like we did the last time.
I'm just making sure the council wants to agree, because initially the council wanted to remove this to give us more flexibility without having to go into open work session. But I think Mr. Wilbur has assured us we can do it.
There's another way
So
we could go about it.
They're not necessary to worry about it at this time.
Yeah, it's just a rare situation. I mean, I think we had that situation come up one time. Yeah, so.
Important though, but yeah.
Okay, so from what I'm understanding, Mr. Wilbur, we are going to leave it as it is.
Just leave it as it is.
Yes.
It was a once and hopefully forever situation.
Section 306. Let me skip ahead real quick here. Bond counsel and 312 and 313. I don't think the council cares. I mean, what's being recommended?
From Lindsay.
Has to be recommended, right?
Yeah,
You have to follow it.
I would say, let me just present that, Lindsay's recommendations, let me present it to the council, and then you can all read it. It's going to be easier than trying to discuss it.
Are we going to understand it? Even if we read it? I mean, seriously, I hate legal jargon sometimes.
No.
Sometimes I say, look, they're the professionals.
It's bond
Take their
counsel
advice.
world.
I thought that we already had that. I thought we already did have all the language.
Yeah, Lindsay recommended language. I've taken that language, I've inserted it,
Okay, so
and
you changed it some.
I have put throughout by resolution so we can move these things more quickly.
Okay,
They're going to find their way on there.
so you'll include that in the,
It'll be in the write-up that I'm going
okay.
to send
all right.
out.
Okay,
Yep.
good. All right, so let's go back to 306, action by council physically present. Mr. Wilbur to come up with language to allow visual attendance, 306. I guess this is what, a spillover from COVID?
Here's what, based on the last discussions, I said at the end there, established by this charter must be physically present or visually present with the approval of the council president due to extenuating circumstances to constitute a quorum. That seemed to be the gist of the discussion last time.
I'm okay with that. The one question, is there anything at the state level that would conflict with? Is there anything any meeting thing from the state or anything that says council people have to be present for?
No, I don't think so. In fact, I think more and more governments are going to allowing
No, no, it all makes sense.
present
Make
or
sure-
by electronic means, you know.
So what are you going to bring forward for us? Because obviously, being physically present is no longer something this world lives by.
So the way I drew it was it's physically present or visually present with the approval of the council president due to extenuating circumstances. So it's
Okay, is that okay with what's being recommended?
It's red, right?
Yes.
it's not just physically or visually, there has to be an approval and a reason.
Somebody just can't, instead of coming to meetings.
I don't ever want to come to a meeting, I'll Zoom you.
I'll vote better in my pajamas.
Can I just jump in? Do you want to allow more than just visually present, like right now? I mean, I do a
Larry's
lot of
visually
telephone conference.
I wouldn't say he's visually present now.
Well, I mean, I
This
just
isn't a
wrote
quorum.
bylaws for a corporation where we put it in there, some electronic means.
We
that
could
allows
have
him to
electronic.
hear everything that's being said and you to hear whatever the absent person's saying.
We
Then
could
you don't
say-
have to see them.
We could say electronically
Electronically.
present.
Yeah, I think that's a really good compromise. That is.
I think it's important that, from what my research was, that they can hear you and you can hear them.
I mean, seriously, because if somebody's got bandages wrapped all around them and two black eyes and a busted lip, I don't think they want to be on camera the whole
No,
time.
I don't mean that you can see them, but that
No, I know.
Yeah.
you can hear each.
I know. That's
Yeah.
why I think it's good that you say electronic.
Electronically, so I think that's the visual or the
Okay.
verbal
Okay.
discretion of the president.
Bond counsel. So do we want to stop right now? We're at section 314A. I think, do we want to stop or we want to keep going? Everybody?
I could keep going, but
I can keep going.
I'm slightly bit longer. 8:49.
Larry, you want to keep going or you want to stop? Larry.
It's up to you guys.
Let's see what Bill wants to do. It's like, we're kind of like a, okay, well, while we're waiting for Bill, let's do 314A, right? Let's get through it. 314A, what does that entail, Mr.?
This is the non-interference section. And
Oh, geez.
yeah, let me just throw out my thought based on what I heard. I think 314A, I don't understand the generally. I'd strike that, and I'd have essentially neither the county council nor any of its members, 1, 2, 3, and B, and then I would add a C. And I've got the county council may request information from the executive branch for legislative matters. That's a proposal I'm throwing out there.
When you say, you mean from the executive branch, right?
Yeah.
Well, does that mean from department heads? Because that to me sounds like we still have to do what we have to do now, and that's you have to go directly to the executive.
To me, the executive branch is all those departments. You know, I mean, what's in the executive branch? It's all those departments.
I think it would, my personal opinion is that I think it needs to be more specific because the key thing that we're trying to do here, we get it.
could
That
say-
we do not want a department head to have 8 bosses, 7 council members, and the executive. We really get that. We also don't want to create a conflict on that employee between what they may tell us and then how they might have to answer to the executive.
Right.
So that was the reason for the separation, the complete separation. On the reverse side of it, it's really tough for a constituent to come to us as their elected official in their individual district, and the only answer we can give them is that you're going to have to talk to the county executive about that because I can't go to that department head. Because then they're saying, well, why are you my elected official if the only person that can solve my problem is the executive? So we wanted to kind of like find a balance where the council members could go to department heads and express concerns. We just didn't want them to browbeat the heck out of them, which unfortunately you will find that council members will do that. The city had a real problem with that for many years.
Correct.
So where's the common ground?
So I don't say information from the executive, I say from the executive branch, trying to make it more inclusive. That was why I chose that word. And then I had 4 legislative matters.
How does it work at the state level? Because, how does it work at the state level?
If a House of Delegate member
Wants to do a bill on the environment.
wants information,
Yeah, and they want the department, someone from the Department of Environment to work with them on legislation. Or does that just not happen? The legislative body does legislation, the governor executes it.
I would say I could find out the answer. I want to be sure of my answer before I'd answer that question. And certainly we have resources, local resources, we can ask about the process.
The departments do have a legislature.
The commission didn't make any recommendation on this, right?
No, the council had a concern about this.
Council brought
This is
this up
one of the
with it.
questions that council wanted to have.
But the
addressed.
commission did not. I mean,
No, this was one of the
Yeah.
questions that the council wanted the commission to address.
Yeah, and they did vote on it. It passed unanimously to delete the word generally and insert the words unless for the purpose of inquiry or information. That was the way that they addressed it. So that would just be 314A, getting rid of generally, and then
going with the words.
unless for the purpose of inquiry or information, neither the county council nor any of its members
Miss-
So
shall.
I think the only question for us is, do we want to add that or not?
I think we do.
Well,
But you also,
but that wording, when you read that wording in this section, it would say, well, then you could attempt to supervise, direct, administer, interfere. It's
Well,
what
we don't want that.
what the committee came up with. I appreciate their sentiment, but the wording's not right.
Yeah, the flow of that paragraph just didn't, once he actually made that change,
Right.
didn't seem to be.
So what's your
what
wording
they
again,
wanted.
Paul?
So what I did
Read
is
that
I
again.
dropped down and put a C as a new sentence, trying to accomplish the same thing, that if the council has inquiries and wants information, they can get it. They're entitled. My sentence was the county council may request information from the executive branch, and I said for legislative matters.
But that still wouldn't get at some of the issues with, I guess, with constituent service or something like that, I guess.
He's
That's why
saying
you
that
have
that
it.
would allow us that
Oh, okay.
flexibility, correct? That would
Yeah,
allow us.
I'm trying
As
to,
long as we didn't violate, and I think you should reiterate in there, as long as they are not in violation of the three prior, section A, 1, 2, and 3. I think you should reiterate that, don't you think?
It already says that, so, you know,
Well, okay.
I think there's a word missing though, and it's like, there's gotta be some kind of reasonableness to the request. You just said they may request.
like badgering. We
Yeah,
don't
right.
want-
There's gotta be
like-
some kind of reasonableness or just, it's gotta be a justifiable, you know, I know I'm saying the right word, but you know, it's gotta be justifiable, it's gotta,
Or could we have like something like you have to include, I was gonna say, well, it'd be one thing if it's a call or one thing if it's an email. If it's an email, you could say you have to include, copy a subordinate or like copy a superior or something like that, I guess, but
Well,
you can't really
I-
do that for.
I interpreted what you just read. I mean, I could call the director of public works and say, I want this, and they give me that, and I can come back and say, I want this, and the next day I can say, I want this. Yeah, I mean, just on and on.
That ever happened before?
Yes. Yes.
Sooner or later, the executive, I think, can pull rank and say, look, you're in violation of A1.
Yeah, they would say, right, A1, and the executive would probably say, I'm turning off the spigot at that point.
Yeah.
Can I raise this?
And then the council person would go to C though.
Why don't you amend B, communications, as opposed to adding C? Why don't you just amend B under communications? Because that's the real restrictive part.
We had situations before where we had basically to try to get Laura to get information from us. Now, my understanding was it's kind of like with county roads. You can call county roads and say, hey, there's trash alongside such and such a road. But you can't call county roads and say there's trash along such and such a road, go clean it up.
Yeah.
And that's,
That's an
and that's
effective
kind of what I've done. I'll call Mark or Lee and say, hey, look, we got a problem out on such and such road, just making you aware. They go take care of it.
That's fine.
Now, the other issue we had before, unfortunately, it got to the point where, the prior county executive didn't even want us to talk to the department heads.
Right.
So,
See, that gets back to the letter, the cover letter that the commission wrote to us, about the generality of, we shouldn't be trying to necessarily change every item here and so forth, that at the end of the day, the two forms of government need to work together. A lot of these things would be solved if we all just simply work together.
the third part of that is there is a problem and you're trying to take care of it, and the executive's office don't react and won't do anything. So, what do you do then?
Yeah, I mean,
You
you bring that up in an election. when it
Or you
comes-
talk about it in
Well,
council
you say
meeting.
bring it up at an election, but in the meantime, the people that are having the problems got to wait until the election. That don't make sense.
But that can happen with council people too, if
Yeah.
council aren't doing their job, or a council person, that's just, unfortunately, I'm not sure how you get around that. I mean, if somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to
You
do.
do have a council comment section at the
Right.
meetings where you can air things out if it moves that far.
Yeah, and you have to
Paul,
pull it.
If you use the language for legislative purposes, doesn't that stop constituent, helping out constituent has a specific problem?
It could be a limitation on that, yes.
Yeah.
It would
So
be.
like, for example, the fallen hero, credit, the fallen hero. If you wanted information from the county executive finance department, we could say specifically, we're writing this legislation, this is the information we need. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And even then, I would do that somewhat hesitantly, because then what happens, like, and even in Joe's example, Joe talks to Lee and says, Lee, there's trash down there and whatever, and so those guys go out there, and then maybe, the executive could say, why did you guys finish that job, down at Boston Switch? And they go, well, Joe called us and he said we needed to go over here.
Yeah, yeah.
And all of a sudden, you have a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Then the employee's caught in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is really the toughest one we really have. And I agree with what Andy says. For legislative purposes, Paul may not go far enough.
Okay, we can strike that.
Or you could say like immediate constituent needs or something. Is there something like that where you could say that there's that there's an immediate need within I don't know, I'm trying to think of thinking out loud.
You're not exciting me here. I mean, I just feel like we're trying to circumvent the executive form of government. And that's the form of government we have. You want that separation. I mean, so I think we got to be careful here how we word this.
Yeah, if we just say the county council may request information from the executive branch and stop right there, then you're really leaving it to everybody acting reasonably. And I don't know how you.
Sometimes that don't work.
Yeah. I mean, you can get problems on both sides. Say you have an executive that is non-responsive, or you have a council member who is badgering. So both are not the place you want to be. But it's hard to, we're talking about human behavior here, and it's hard to quantify that or limit it in a charter. But I think the county council does need the charter stated ability to ask for information from the executive. So do we just leave it there, or do we try to carve this up a little bit more?
Well, I just
That's
think,
what we're
once again,
wrestling
I
with.
just think there's one more word we got to get in there, whether it's the word, reasonable.
You can say may make reasonable requests for information.
But that's something that simple. At least you if someone's asking every day for 1,000 copies of whatever, well, that's not reasonable. There's got to be something to protect against that.
But Bill, we've got we've got one form of government, two bodies. Isn't this body entitled to any information that the county executive has?
Not necessarily.
Isn't there another section, Mr. Wilbur, that clearly states that the county executive is required to give the information that the county requests?
I think there
On
is.
request.
On request, there is.
Yeah, I think there is another section. Yeah.
But is that after, that should be after following proper channels, like through our office, correct?
Right, and maybe we could live with that, as long as the executive cannot just refuse it outright.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's something in the
Did we have
executive section.
examples of where we couldn't get information?
Yeah, I know, but that comes down to how do you get rid of an executive? That's like another, yeah.
That's another
How
discussion.
do state delegates and senators get information from the governor's office?
I've had a lot of the Eastern Shore delegation who will just say very casually, yeah, I need to go talk to Secretary so-and-so, and I'll get
Yeah.
back to you on that. So that's an open exchange, but these are employees of the executive, and it's a whole lot different. And I'm sure the secretary has a working relationship with the governor where they immediately call the governor and say, Johnny Mouse came in here, and by the way, here's what I'm sure, and I would guess that they openly exchange that information.
So it's just an open agreement.
Yeah.
And that's what most of the people working in a congressman's office do, is call different departments to get things done for constituents.
Yeah.
So section 402, it's 402C, it says the duties and responsibilities of the county executive shall include but not be limited to providing the council with any information concerning the executive branch which the council may require for the exercise of its powers.
There you go.
So maybe our problem's solved right there.
That says it well.
And again, Joe, to answer your question, if it's refused, it's refused. Then we have to figure out how we never have found anything with enough teeth to go in that direction. You know what I'm saying? We never did resolve that part of it.
So perhaps we just don't do anything to this interference section about information.
I say we leave it
Just
alone and.
go it.
There is, and believe me, I've been just as much as anyone else here through the thick and thin of it. Okay.
Okay.
Confirmation of appointments, section 315.
I have a question on this. So if this is requiring, at the end of it, it says that if it is not done within 45 days, then they are automatically approved. So, but what if there's a vacancy that hasn't been filled for a year
Or almost 2 years.
or 2 years? Like, when does the council step in and say, okay, these vacancies haven't been filled? And, I mean, is this kind of a, do you need to put language in there as a, if it's not done? I mean,
Does it say the county executive must fill these vacancies in that period of time?
No.
Is that what it says?
No.
This is about confirming an appointment from.
It's about
this is the one
confirmation.
Confirming an appointment from the executive.
It says the executive, correct?
Council fails to act to confirm or reject an appointment within 45 days of its submission to the council. The executive, the appointment shall stand approved. But that's not what we had concerns about.
Didn't the commission say you just leave that alone?
I think so. I have no changes in that.
Yeah, they recommended not, yeah, they recommended it and leave it as it is. I mean, they talked about it, but didn't find yeah.
I mean, was it something we raised to them as being an issue? Because maybe they weren't even aware that we haven't had department heads for
Well, like,
1
yeah,
or 2 years.
once again, it's,
There was never a problem with 315A.
yeah, right. Or
Yeah, I think that's in a different section, Nicole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Off track.
There was never a problem with 315A. Is it 315B we had a problem with? The problem I think we had was the fact that, wasn't there a problem that where we couldn't make a decision to make an appointment and we had to go beyond that day and we had to extend it? What was that for? I can't remember. It's getting late.
I think you're talking about the acting situation. You know, so many days, and then it comes back to the council, and so many more days.
Did a half hour ago.
So the question we submitted to the Charter Review Committee was, should the confirmation be done before a person is hired? So that was the question that was presented to them, and they did not make any recommendations to change it.
Oh, yeah, I don't think that's, that was so irregular,
right.
so irregular. I mean,
That's when it sounded like
how would a hire ever be made if the council hadn't approved it? That was, those were instances that.
It was done, John.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
a couple times.
But again, that comes down to, what happened was a violation of the charter, so it comes down again to what control the council has over an executive when they violate the charter. I mean, those are this issue and the last one we talked about, both of them are what do you do when the executive ignores the charter?
And that's, whether it's tonight or tomorrow, another night, that's a big discussion, I think.
It is huge, I know, because we're trying to find Band-Aid patches in the charter because of violations that occurred, where the reality is, how would we put a stronger hold on the executive to keep them from violating the charter?
Works director.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Can I just
Yes.
Knock it out.
remind council that we are on a time schedule for the charter amendments because Mr. Wilbur will need to have everything prepared and sent off to the Board of Elections in August.
Yep.
So we need to start.
But I think you're making good progress. I think we're on schedule.
Let's knock it out.
So,
You want to keep going?
we will add it,
We're done.
Yeah.
it's after 9
Who's
o'clock.
not agreeing with us?
I think
We can add it to our second meeting in May. All right, we'll finish this in our second meeting in May. And we really need to review these carefully before you come in here, because these next ones, section 408, these are some tough ones.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an easier way to, because I got like their recommendations, I got
Yeah, it's hard to.
the
keep up for.
committee, I got our recommendations, and I'm trying to look at the charter, yeah, I got like, I'm trying to,
Is there any way,
I don't
even
know a
with
better way to do
the
that,
sections that we haven't discussed yet, to
or we put them up on
continue?
the screen maybe, or something?
Is there any way to continue with what your recommendation is on the red line presentation, and to do that for the sections we haven't discussed yet, knowing what we're anticipating to do?
Right. I mean, if you want, I'll give you a quick preview about 408.
Yeah.
What I see is in 408A, that's very common language throughout the state in charters, just the way it's written. What I think that can be added to this is a B, and that's about censuring by the county council for actions which are repeated substantial violations of the charter. But going on to this question of, can the council remove the executive? I don't see the authority for that, because that's thwarting what the election did. But what you do, and I'm sure you've probably had lots of discussions about this, you do have the right to go for a writ of mandamus over in court, which is executive, either do something you haven't been doing or stop doing something that you are doing. But that's writ of mandamus territory. That's like a,
Will a judge even hear that because we were told the judge wouldn't even hear that because it's a government issue and it's not to be dealt with.
judges would be reluctant to hear it, yes. Judges do not like to get involved in governmental disputes.
By that time, you're on the front page.
Yeah, it's a tough nut to crack, but
You end up with a government running amok, and nobody.
I mean, somebody has to step up and call the balls and strikes, and usually that is a court. But that's,
All right,
That's
I
sort of the-
I think we'll stop and we'll finish this up in our next meeting.
yeah. And what I think I'll do is I'm going to send out to you what we've talked about, and in the future, the sections about bond, I can write those up. And then we can maybe just work out the 408s, what you want to do there. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
To move.
Second.
Go to
Second.
sleep, Larry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Paul.
The problem is
Thank you.
all the thought that you're putting into this, I mean, there's serious